And we want to welcome to the program this morning and thank him very much ahead of time from Caltrans, Jeff Pimentel. Did I say the last name correct, Jeff?
Pimentel.
Pimentel.
Close.
Pimentel. All right. Well, I'll try to do better. We'll just stick with Jeff. I appreciate you joining us on the program here. And the reason that we've invited Jeff here, with all the craziness as us average drivers are experiencing going down Broadway, and we've got questions like, why are they doing this? What's going on there? We're coming to you to see if you can give us a few answers and insight for what's going on. It's my understanding it's actually two different projects. You have some construction from about 14th Street North is one project. 14th Street South is another project. Have we understood that to be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We have a couple things going on right now. So from about 14th Street, actually Wabash, going north on Broadway, that's our Broadway and 5th Street safety project that just commenced construction here within the last week and a half, 2 weeks. That project, in contrast to what I'll talk about in a moment, is a project that will construct permanent improvements such as replacing driveways and curb ramps and doing some drainage work, installing fiber optic lines for traffic signal interconnects. And those are all permanent improvements that are being made to the facility. So that's in contrast to what's going on south of there, where you'll notice various what we call channelizers or kind of like round plastic cylindrical items that are kind of glued and bolted down to the roadway that are temporary in nature, and that's what we're calling our Broadway pop-up demonstration. We've done a series of public meetings and other community outreach to get input and let people know that was coming. But essentially that's taken place from about Wabash going south all the way to Harris Avenue, and you'll notice a number of temporary things placed out there that almost looks like it's paving the way for construction, but those are actually temporary improvements so that we can evaluate and measure and receive data and feedback from the community on how they operate. And there's really 4 things we're testing out there today. One of those is a Class 4 bikeway between Hawthorne and Wabash. You'll notice that on both sides of the facility there. On Broadway, testing a bike lane. We're also testing some curb extensions at some of the curb ramps, and that would kind of help make pedestrians a little more visible to drivers as they're crossing the roadway and shorten their crossing distances. And then we're also looking and testing the closing of some acceleration-deceleration lanes at some of the signalized intersections. And then finally, there are sections that we have closed short segments of the two-way left turn lane to test that impact on drivers as well as emergency responders, and those could be potential future pedestrian crossings of Broadway.
All right. Well, you've got a lot going on. Let me ask you real quick, because you got a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm kind of like bookmarking them in my head here. So the construction phase from Wabash North, that is going to be temporary to whatever degree temporary is, and then the actual roadway should return somewhat as far as turn lanes, et cetera, turn signals to what we know it as. Is that correct?
Wabash North is permanent, so that's a construction project that'll make all the improvements permanent.
Right, but
south of Wabash are temporary tests.
Right, but the right now the lanes where we've lost the ability to turn anywhere to the west or east, the turn lane that's disappeared, the turns at 14th Street for our logging trucks and everybody else that wants to get into the stores and so forth, that will eventually return and we'll have those turn lanes back. Is that correct?
Correct. So that's just a byproduct of all the traffic control that is installed to facilitate that construction.
So let me ask you about the philosophy in some of these on the other project in the cones and such. Curious about Harris Street. The test there is to see what if instead of 2 lanes going up there or a more gentle off of 101 onto Harris, we're making a more of a hard right and a more narrow. And I'm thinking about truckers. I'm thinking about emergency personnel. I'm just thinking about people having to slow down to make a turn off that, and thus reducing and bottlenecking traffic behind it. What's the philosophy that they think might be achieved with that if that became permanent?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at most all the improvements we're testing, it's really with an attempt to bring a more balance between all road users. So,
Well, okay. So let me stop real quick. Let me ask you that, because these were never thought. What quantity of motorized vehicles are on there, cars and trucks, on an average? I've heard anywhere from 30 to 40,000 vehicles a day. Is that correct?
That sounds in the correct ballpark. I don't have that data right in front of me right now.
Okay.
But, 101 through Eureka, as you head north through the corridor, all this stretch is our highest volume route
Right.
in the district. So when you're talking about the most traffic our district sees in the 4 counties that we manage, this route definitely is at the peak.
That's at the worst. Okay, so that's one of the users, and I hear that you say you're looking for a balance between all users. I'm assuming one of the other users that you're trying to balance things are for bicyclists. Is that correct?
Yeah, bicyclists, pedestrians. You even have subsets within each of those groups.
Okay. Well,
your disabled community and others.
So
there's a lot of people.
So let me ask, in comparison to the 30 or 40,000 cars and trucks that use the roadway, how many bicyclists in an average on a day are using that? Compared to the 30 to 40,000, how many bicyclists are on Broadway?
So I also don't have that data in front of me.
Are we talking 1,000? Are we talking 2,000 bicyclists a day?
Yeah, I wouldn't even be able to take a guess right now. So, but I think that the important point to recognize here is that Broadway has not historically been a very comfortable location for pedestrians and cyclists to utilize.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is really to balance that use and encourage more of that active transportation. And so that's what we're looking at. All these improvements really are geared towards balancing those needs for all users and make cycling, walking, and all those what we would call non-motorized uses of transportation a more comfortable, safer experience along Broadway. So really the intent is let's test these things out. There's a survey online. I encourage everyone to go to BroadwayPopups.com, and at the top of that page there's a link to a survey, and we'd love to hear from everyone on their experience, interaction with these tests.
So no really word on what they're trying to do on like Harris, other than trying to make it where, again, I can see, because again, I drive sometimes with a trailer behind me, and that's a bitch of a turn to try to make with the obstructions that are there. I've got a relative who is an engineer for Humboldt Bay Fire, and he says it's impossible to drive fire apparatus there. And I was kind of curious in that same regard with the center turn lanes and the blocking there. That quite often is our emergency personnel's escape in trying to get through the heavy traffic that we've already talked about on there. But yet it's looking like it may be blocked off if this was to follow through, and then thus their response time would be reduced on an emergency situation.
Yeah, so emergency responders are a partner with us in this test, and so we will be getting data and feedback from them based on these short segments of closure of the two-way left turn lane to ensure and see how they impact them. I know that when looking at permanent improvements, something we've discussed with them is in terms of curbs that might be installed for a short segment, like a median for pedestrian crossing. Oftentimes, to make them traversable by emergency responders, we'll make them what's called a rolled curb or mountable curb, so they can actually still go over them. It wouldn't impede their travel. Obviously, right now with the channelizers in place, it would, but that's why we're testing it out and getting their feedback and seeing how it impacts their responses.
Okay. So the bottom line is we're trying to do this for really getting having cars and pedestrians, or excuse me, having bikes and pedestrians have a safer access versus the 30 to 40,000 cars that are there. We're trying to take care of the few hundred that are currently on the other side of it.
Yeah, we're just trying to balance everyone's needs. And traditionally, the way the public and community would interact with us on project development would be, we'd have a public meeting, you'd see, line work on paper, and we expect everyone to just understand what we're going to be installing and understand what the results will be. But this is allowing us to get community feedback and input based on actual interactions with the improvements without actually making them permanent. So we feel it's a better use of state taxpayer dollars to go and test something and just be sure that, the ultimate permanent project that we build is a representation of community feedback and actual data on its use. So then, when we're developing the project in its permanent nature, we can, tweak things and iterate and base that project based on feedback and actual data on how it functioned in the real world.
Okay.
That's really our intent behind it.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate that, and I know there was public meeting stuff, and this is always a challenge for all of us in whatever level, whether it's government, business, or whatever, that you try to make everybody aware of stuff, and nothing seems to be absorbed until a change is made. Then everybody has a big outcry. So it is good that there's a chance for people to still put input in. And again, what's the source to find that online survey so people can respond and you guys can hear their responses?
Yeah, so we encourage everyone to go. We've got a website, and the address is www.broadwaypopup.com. And at the top of that page is a link to a survey. We encourage everyone to fill that out, and we encourage you, if you haven't lately, traveled through Eureka, experience those. Again, notice this is everything south of Wabash. North of Wabash is not part of the Broadway pop-ups. And let us know what you feel about it based on your vantage point and your use of the facility.
All right, Jeff, I appreciate your time to chat with all of us here. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the basketball court maybe, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
92 and 98.3, this is